Sorry, it was a little bit of a delay there. Now we are recording. The parameters of temperature and energy are extreme, but they are not infinite, as they are under the standard concept of cosmological singularity. Consequently, no insuperable obstacle or principle exists to investigating and explaining them. It is not true that nature is open to our understanding only in its first state, but not in its second. Much higher degrees of freedom are excited than we observe in the cool-down universe. And the penumbra of the adjacent possible around each phenomenon now becomes thick and rich. It does so whether we account for this wealth of transformative opportunity in the language of either causal or statistical determination. The laws, at least the effective laws applicable to particular domains, cease to be readily distinguishable from states of affairs that they govern. If the phenomena change, the laws changed coevally with them. This last characteristic of the second state of nature is intimately related to all the other traits. To the absence of clear and stable structural divisions, and thus of distinct domains to which different sets of effective laws would apply. to the extreme though finite physical parameters, and to the enhanced degrees of freedom enjoyed by the phenomena. The range of other phenomena that the existing phenomena can become, and the facility with which they can turn into them. The second cosmological fallacy is the disposition to take account of only the first state of nature, while disregarding the second. And to do so in our methods as well as in our theories. When we succumb to this fallacy, our conception of how to practice science as well as our view of the workings of nature allows itself to be shaped by an intellectual engagement with only one set of variations of nature. It becomes, in a sense, the science of a special case. It consequently remains limited in the reach of its insight, even into that special case. The deepest enigmas of nature escape it. It is not just the Newtonian paradigm that takes this path. It is an entire approach to science that has been shaped by the assumption that the first of these two states of nature represents the ultimate and constant character of reality. In developing and supporting the idea that the universe has a history, Cosmology, however, has already given us grounds to reject this assumption as false. On one interpretation of its findings, everything is emergent. Everything comes and goes, except time. The emergence of everything except time is one of the ways in which the first state of nature ceases to represent the essential and enduring character of reality. It is not the only way. Every version of the now standard account of the origins of the present universe suggests that nature at the earliest moments in the formation of the present observed universe may have displayed traits very different from those it later came to exhibit as a cool down and assume the structured form in which we now observe it. It is simply that under many of the most influential cosmological theories, the alternative traits of nature remain hidden under the veil of the infinite. The state that these theories purport to describe is one in which the parameters of the phenomena had infinite values. To ascribe infinite values to them is to place them effectively beyond the reach of inquiry and understanding. The ultimate secrets of universal history would remain sealed behind a door that we could never open. The result would be, indeed it has been, to allow us to treat the variations and workings of nature as we encounter them this side of that door, as if they were its permanent traits. It would also be to regard the practice of science that relies on this assumption as what science must always be. If nature wears multiple disguises, the states through which it passes, a science that presupposes a stable structure of ultimate constituents of nature. The structure represented at one scale by the standard model of particle physics and at another scale by the periodic table. And a framework of immutable laws or symmetries clearly distinct from the phenomena that they govern, cannot be more than the science of a special case. Even if a special case of broad and enduring application. Such a science, the science that we in fact have, will be bereft of the cosmological equivalent of the physics of phase transitions. An account of the transitions from one state of nature to another. Unlike the physics of phase transitions, such an account is universal rather than local. Unlike the physics of phase transitions, it requires a style of scientific explanation that dispenses both with the idea of a framework of immutable laws of nature and the picture of nature as a differentiated structure made up of distinct elementary constituents, forces, fields, and particles, interacting with one another in conformity to such laws. The two cosmological fallacies are closely connected. They reinforce each other. They make each other seem to be unavoidable conceptions. Indispensable to the practice of scientific inquiry, rather than the contestable options that they are in fact. And I have to put in there, until we know about it. It would be impossible to question them without reading Unger/Smolin's articles. You would strictly not know about them. They would be out of view. And to question something you don't know about is impossible. It's very similar as if one would question the existence of America before the discovery of it. Can be done, but it doesn't mean anything. It's not a true questioning. The first cosmological fallacy presupposes a view. The second cosmological fallacy limits our understanding of the variations of nature. In so doing, it makes the cosmological use of the Newtonian paradigm seem less troubling than it would otherwise be. It fails to solve the problem of the breakdown in a cosmological context of any distinction between initial conditions and a local configuration space of law-governed phenomena. Similarly, it does nothing to show how we can be justified in using the Newtonian paradigm in a setting which we have no hope of observing or preparing copies of the explained phenomena. Nevertheless, the second cosmological fallacy represents nature as working always and everywhere in the way in which Newtonian paradigm supposes it to work, by the conformity of distinct elements of phenomena within a differentiated structure to changeless laws. The first cosmological fallacy presupposes a view of the workings of nature that makes any other conception of how nature works seem to be incompatible with the requirements of science. All the better than if nature can provide us with an excuse for the limitations of our insight by taking refuge in an exceptional condition that, because it has infinite parameters, is forever barred to investigation and understanding. It is for this reason that the conventional idea of cosmological singularity helps makes the universalization of the Newtonian paradigm seem legitimate. By associating the finite with the workings of nature in the cool-down state of the universe, and any other variant of nature with the impenetrable infinite, it lends appeal to the second cosmological fallacy. Despite their reciprocal connections, the two cosmological fallacies have different characters and consequences. The second is more fundamental and more far-reaching in its applications and implications than the first. The first cosmological fallacy commits a mistake of method. With empirical assumptions and implications. The second cosmological fallacy amounts to mistake about the facts of the matter, with wide consequence for the practice of science. The matter it mistakes is the most important in science. The nature and history of the universe. So it's not a small thing that is hidden here. So let me summarize the last 3 lectures. And I started with saying this is a very narrow point made by Unger /Smolin. But that doesn't matter, that the implications are not grand. I would say the implications are enormous. The mathematization of physics, the geometrization of physics, is an unbelievable limitation. It limits far, far more than one can even understand. I think this graph could make a picture that you force a grid over the universe, ourselves, and reality. And sometimes something turns up and sometimes nothing turns up. And then we get a very neat, we got a 1 here, 0, 0, 0. Here we got a 1 here in the second, 0, 1, 0, 1, the second line here. So we got this. And since this, the graph is in there from the beginning because of the second fallacy, they interlock. And once they interlocked, there is no escape. But what it hides is extremely beyond belief. Could be the biggest bluff ever played on humankind. And only the really big bluffs in this size, this diameter, this magnitude, has to be unconscious. There's no possibility of pulling this off with an intention. Intention will have the mark of thinking or planning of some sort that can be revealed or thought of. This doesn't have that tendency. It seems as natural as the world itself. The matter that it mistakes is the most important in science, the nature and history of the universe. Both things disappears. The argument against the first cosmological fallacy ends in a negative claim. The claim that we are not entitled to apply the whole world the methods and habits of mind that modern science has applied to parts of the world. This negative claim in turn evokes the need for a way of thinking different from the one that the Newtonian practice expresses. The argument against the second cosmological fallacy results in a positive claim. The claim that there is already more, implied if not shown, in what science has discovered about the universe than our established natural philosophy, the lens under which we read these discoveries is willing to countenance. It suggests that this something more is baffling, but in principle not inscrutable, and that our understandings have not yet caught up to our findings. It inspires the need for a practice of science that can persevere in the endeavor of scientific inquiry, even when the two features of nature that he has seen most indispensable to science are missing. The presence of distinct and constant elements or types and their interaction according to law-like regularities. The arguments against the two cosmological fallacies requires us to think historically about nature and its laws. As a result, they force us to confront what we here call the conundrum of the meta-laws. if the laws of nature have a history inseparable from the history of nature, it seems unacceptable to say either that their history is itself law-governed or that it is not. If the history of the laws of nature is law-governed, we seem to have rescued part of the standard view of science only by equivocating about the reality of time and by separating the content of the laws from the vicissitudes of the phenomena. If their history is not law-governed, it appears to lack an explanation. In violation of the principle of sufficient reason. Moreover, our causal explanations, relying as they do on the picture of a law-governed world, are rendered insecure. They will remain insecure until we change our understanding of the relation between causal connections and laws of nature. The meta-laws conundrum is central to the agenda of cosmology. The solution to this conundrum bears on the meaning of every proposition within natural science. Cosmology is not an afterthought to physics. It is part of the natural science that has the most general implications for all the other parts. I think we'll end there. Continue next time. I say thank you very much. It is a most interesting subject that Roberto Unger takes up. It is very hard to fathom, because rather than fathom or put it into a box for understanding, it explodes the box or do not fit the box of understanding. But to be honest, I never read anything similar to this. I have had helped by what I read about Julian Barber earlier, but this is taking the whole matter into a very difficult level, beyond mathematics, as Barber would be very stuck to, so as every other physicist. Well, I say thank you very much. It was incredibly interesting, and sorry for the slow mode of talking and discussing, but this does take its time. I'm convinced that this is the result of the dominance of the left hemisphere. It might be that the left hemisphere doesn't have its particular traits, and it has been forced to take over thinking. It is not a traitor and a conqueror and an usurper. I think that's the word I'm looking for. The left hemisphere is not an usurper. It was forced into place by this very hidden fact or hidden conundrum. Conundrum is the word, hidden conundrum. Why, thank you very much, and have a very pleasant afternoon at 5 o'clock.